Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the about turn that Donald Trump has taken on the tariffs. He has paused the implementation of reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. And he was telling all along that there would be no change in his policies and they would come into effect on April 9th. But on April 9th, he announced on a very hectic Wednesday that he's pausing the reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. The result of that was obviously a bounce back on the stock markets. The Dow Jones index jumped by 3,000 points. We are still not back to April 1st, but you can say that the markets have recovered some of the capital that they had lost in the massive sell-off on April 3rd, 4th, and then again in this week. And also after Chinese tariffs, announcement of Chinese reciprocal tariffs. So why did Donald Trump pause and why is there sudden change in the policy? I think that there are four reasons why he's doing that. I mean, there are some that everybody is talking about as to what really propelled Donald Trump to go ahead and pause the tariff. So I think there are four reasons, and I'm going to share those four reasons with you. But before that, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. So let's look at it this way. I think that Donald Trump assumed that most of the world would automatically succumb and surrender. And he kept talking about how he was powerful and how most of the world was kissing his ass. That's how he sees countries that have agreed to negotiate with him, especially countries like India, Israel, and Vietnam, panicking from the negative consequences of the reciprocal tariffs, have basically come rushing to Washington to negotiate. Trump sees that as kissing his ass. And so he was pretty confident that using access to America's consumer market would give him the power to change the nature of global geoeconomics. That is one thing, and I'm sure he was probably surprised by the extent of opposition that he faced, first from Canada, which also imposed 25% tariffs on several items that is exported to Canada from the US, and especially targeting Republican dominant states. So that was one thing I don't think he anticipated. The second thing is that even the European Union was pushing back, and of course, above all, Xi Jinping of China. He just did not bat an eyelid and went toe to toe with Donald Trump. So we saw the escalation of tariffs between China and the US. US went to 20%. China didn't do anything. US imposed additional 34% reciprocal tariff, going to 54%. Then Xi Jinping responded with 34% tariffs on American goods, but also put other non-tariff barriers on American exports and American purchases, imports also, especially dual technology imports. Another thing that happened was then Donald Trump raised it to 104, and Xi Jinping responded, raising the tariffs to 84. And so what was interesting was that the fact that China did not come forward to negotiate must have sent some troubling signals to a lot of people. What was also fascinating was that nearly everybody now are predicting that the United States is going to go into a recession. A recession means basically that you've had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. That means you're growing at a negative rate, which means that your economy is shrinking, the GDP is shrinking. So the prediction is people are being very careful not to upset Donald Trump. So the prediction, say from JP Morgan, is very optimistic that there's only a 60% chance that we will go into recession. But basically, everybody expects America's economy to shrink, not expand. But the predictions for Chinese economy, in spite of the reciprocal tariffs, etc., is that instead of growing at 5.0%, at 5%, which is the prediction that the Chinese are making, and most banks were expecting that China would grow at 4.5%, they are saying that China will now grow at 4% or at the most 3.9%. So it was very clear that China is not going to go into recession, even though there's fear that most of European Union, a lot of the developing world, so a large segment of the global economy would go into recession if these tariffs had been in place. So I think one reason why Donald Trump decided to pause this was the unprecedented, unexpected response from China to go toe to toe, and basically the analysis that the U.S. would suffer more than China. Now this is a huge thing because it's going to change the balance of power regardless of what Donald Trump does in 3 months' time, whether he brings back the reciprocal tariffs or not. He moves on to other elements in domestic and foreign policy, or he goes back to the tariffs issue. I mean, he's obsessed with this since 2016 or even in the 1980s, so he will probably return to it. But the point is that his advisors have been exposed. All their suggestions of how much pain America would have to suffer was proven wrong. So the second reason why Donald Trump and his made this change is that his advisors, whom his own best friend Elon Musk called Navarro, Peter Navarro, Donald Trump's economic advisor on tariff, as a moron on X, formerly Twitter. And so, yes, his advisors have been exposed as morons because what they had predicted was nothing like what happened in the last 1 week. So if Donald Trump has some sense, he will realize not to rely on these sycophants because they are trying to tell him what he wants to listen rather than giving him sound advice. If they had told him what happened would happen, I'm not very sure that he would be so gung-ho in imposing such high levels of tariffs. He did not start at 25. He could have started at 10, above the broad 10% minimum that he's going to say that he's going to keep in place forever. So the second thing was that his advisors gave him bad advice. And as a result of that, what was happening was that Republicans were facing huge pressure from their constituents who were paranoid that this is going to increase prices. So at every town hall meeting, you saw the Republicans and representatives being basically their constituents are coming and shouting at them. And so they stopped having town hall meetings, but they are afraid that come midterm elections, they're going to get wiped out because of the devastating impact of Donald Trump's tariffs on the economy. I can tell you without any hesitation that the number one goal of Donald Trump with these tariffs to reindustrialize America and bring back manufacturing jobs to America is not going to happen. Manufacturing may come back to the United States, but the manufacturing will go to robots, not to human beings. There will be no jobs. Yes, we may increase manufacturing in the United States and increase the cost of the products that they are producing, but there are not going to be any jobs, and his own constituency is going to feel that very strongly. They will be paying a higher price for most things that they would like to buy without getting higher paying jobs. So the business community also started feeling the pressure, and they started calling him in, and some of the CEOs who are very close supporters of Donald Trump have been publicly going around and talking about, I mean, besides Elon Musk, who called this a moronic policy, basically others have been going around telling that this is not good for the economy, it's going to put the US in recession, etc. So the fact that so many CEOs are now willing to go public with it and the loss of the stock market, a huge, nearly $10 trillion in the last 1.5 months and nearly $6.5 trillion in the last 1 week, must have forced Donald Trump to pause. But here is the clincher. The number one and the most powerful reason is this. So I want to give you a small For those of you who know macroeconomics, you probably know that every time people sell off the stock market, they get cash, and then they take that cash, and where do they put it? They either put it in CDs, in banks, if interest rates are high, or they go to bonds and they go to gold. So usually, when the stock market is going down, cost of bonds are going up. But this time it was very, very unusual. Two unusual things, two things that the economists did not expect happen as a sell-off. So people not only sold off the stocks, but also started selling the bond market, creating a literally panic in the Treasury Department of the United States that, oh my God, after selling stocks, they are not buying bonds, they are also selling bonds. The reason for that is a lot of people who had to pay, those who were selling short or etc., especially the hedge fund people, they needed cash to pay the margins or to basically to buy the stocks and give it away, and so they sold their bond holdings in order to buy the stocks and I guess deliver. So basically what happened. So basically what happened was this: the stock market went down and the bond market also went down. And that was the thing that at least the White House people of the record are acknowledging that led Donald Trump to ultimately say that he's going to ease. And you saw the positive result. The stock markets are bouncing not just in the United States, but they are bouncing back in Asia. So you will see again tomorrow, today, and probably even tomorrow, the stock markets come back. Yesterday, the Dow Jones Index came up by 3,000 points. So basically, what has happened is that Donald Trump has now got a trailer of what is going to happen to the U.S. economy if he persists with this massive tariff-related agenda. Hopefully, he also gets in some new advisors. I don't think that people like Peter Navarro are going to learn anything at all from what happened in the market. They are more ideological than scientific in their orientation. So he needs to bring in people who are willing to tell him that, look, if you implement this policy, something is going to go wrong, and this is what is going to happen. People who are not afraid to tell him what will be the direct and exact financial and economic consequences. See, Donald Trump wants to make America great, and he cannot make America great by destroying American economy. He has already destroyed America's alliances, especially with Europe, which I'm okay with it. Europe is a burden on the United States from a security perspective. I fully understand, but picking an economic fight with Europe, you don't have to be friends to trade. We have been trading with China. China is one of the biggest trading partners of the United States. $600 billion of trade last year, $450 billion in imports, and over $150 billion in exports. So the after I think after Europe, Canada, and after Mexico, Canada, and Europe, China is the biggest export market for the United States. So the U.S. Cannot really continue to expand its own economy without keeping the global economy intact. So these are some of the consequences that I think have forced Donald Trump to get up, wake up, and smell the coffee and decide to pause the tariffs. I think that it is quite possible that he's going to come back with lower tariffs. But one thing still remains in place, which is tariffs on China. 125% now and tariffs. So what is basically happening is that the decoupling of US-China economy has now begun. It's going to be impossible for China to export to the United States with 125% tariffs. It's going to be very difficult for the US to export anything to China with 84% tariffs. But what is also interesting is that yesterday, India's Commerce or Trade Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, had a meeting with business people, and he told them basically not to do dirty things like rerouting and becoming a third country. Basically, he has told Indian businesses that we will give you soft loan to Indian exporters and try to help you out. But for God's sake, do not buy Chinese stuff and sell to the United States to take advantage of the fact that China cannot export. So do not become a rerouting hub for China, because that could turn the US really mad. And US finds that any country, whether it's Vietnam or India or any other place which is buying Chinese stuff for cheap and then trying to sell it in the United States, if they have lower tariffs, then the US will probably impose 125% tariffs on that country, because the whole point of imposing tariffs is to make life tough for China. So I think that is an interesting suggestion. So what ultimately will happen is, unless there is a deal negotiated between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, we are going to ultimately see what everybody thought about it, which is the decoupling of US-China economy. And what is fascinating to me is that it appears that China is prepared to decouple from the US economy. It also gives China greater geopolitical autonomy if it is not dependent on China, on the United States financially. This will obviously mean that there will be a lot of stress on European and developing countries' economies, because China is going to dump all the stuff that it was exporting to the United States on them. So in that sense, we have to now factor in what will be the economic consequences of China-US decoupling on the rest of the world, especially with regards to manufactured goods, where no one can compete with China. I hope Donald Trump has learned something about the world from this. And I want to remind him of a very famous late Indian poet, Rahat Indori, who said something very beautiful, which kind of applies to what happened to Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you the share, as it's called in Hindi. First, I will recite it in Urdu, and then I will translate it for you in English. So Rahat Indori says, "Lagegi aag to aayenge ghar kaiyo zad mein. लगेगी आग तो आएंगे घर कई जद में, यहाँ पर सिर्फ हमारा मकान थोड़ी है." What he meant was, if you light the neighborhood on fire, your house too will be engulfed by it. And when Donald Trump lit the global economy on fire, I think the biggest fire engulfed our own economy. So I hope you found this conversation interesting and thought-provoking. So please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. We live in very, very interesting times, and I'm really beginning to enjoy doing my own show, and I hope you do too. Take care.